gone so low, but I'm never gonna go there again. This is what it is, this is who I am, this is where I finally take my stand. I didn't wanna fall, but I don't have to crawl. I'm not the one with two star hands, giving him the best of everything that's left of the life inside this man. I've been born again.
Yes, Dave. You know, that song, by the way, we haven't played in a while.
Yeah, we're testing the censors at YouTube.
Well, no. Actually, there's another reason that I'm playing that song today. Have you not heard? Michael Tate, the lead singer of Newsboys on that, who used to be with DC Talk, originally with DC Talk.
Guy, yeah.
He has been charged or accused of molestation against young men, against men, and that he's gay and that he's been guilty of this. Now, he came out with a statement. I should have printed it out, but basically confessing to the issue with homosexuality that he has, and just basically confessing and asking for everybody's forgiveness and prayer and everything like this. I think you know that Michael is a dear friend of my family's.
Yes, a consummate professional. His stage presence, he's a great musician.
Right, and he's actually a very wonderful guy. I mean, our first experience was this. I ran into them back in 1987, I believe it was. Yeah, it was about 87 at Gospel Music Association Week in Nashville. And they were running around the mall. They hadn't made it, big publicly. They were a new group. Yeah. They were managed by some friends of mine, Brock, the Brock management group out of, and they ended up buying Forefront Records, which had DC Talk on it, and DeGarmo and Key and several other big artists. In any event, so I heard them do their thing there in Nashville, and then I had seen their CD. They were brand new, their new hot young deal, and I invited them to come to Germany to do do some European tours. We took them to Holland and then Germany the first time. Yeah, and after it, Darlene Brock, John Brock, Dan Brock's wife, who ran the management in the record label, Darlene and Toby decided to go to Paris. They wanted to see Paris. And then Michael and Kevin.
Toby's the
lead singer. Yeah, he's the lead singer. He's a solo now. He's by himself. He's the biggest Christian artist, I think, out there right now.
Right. Most women would be jealous of him.
Well, it wasn't.
Or is that guy?
No.
Who is that guy?
I don't know. He was not with DC Talk.
Oh, DC Talk.
We're talking Newsboys. No. I'm sorry. We're way
prior.
Yeah, we're talking 80s.
Okay, this is the Toby Mac.
Right. Kevin Kevin Smith, and then Michael Tate. But anyway, Kevin and Michael, they didn't know what to do. So I said, well, you guys can come stay at our house. So they stayed with us for a week, and then Michael and my daughter, who at the time, Michael and them were about 24, 25 years old. They were young, seemed a lot younger, but they were about in their 20s. Toby was the oldest. But anyway, and my daughter was like 11, or so. But anyway, my daughter just loved him, and they would go on bike rides, and we have photos of them riding bikes, and he fell on his bike, and she's laughing, I mean, just really kind of cute photos, But and all the time, he never made any overtures or acted out like he was gay or anything like that. And I think it's one of those things that he tried to wrestle with, deal with. Sure. And but like I said, he's always been upstanding, great guy. And I'll tell you the funniest thing I have to say was, so whenever they would come to Oklahoma, you know, my kids would go, and then they'd see him after the show and say, where are your parents? And it's, they didn't feel like they should come. They said, what? You know, well, we're going to be in Oklahoma City. This was when they were in Tulsa. So we're going to be in Oklahoma City. Tell them they'll be there, and we have tickets for them. So what do we do? We said, okay. So we ended up driving to Oklahoma City to see him. And they were warming up for Michael W. Smith at the time.
Okay.
And so they, you know, we're in the, as soon as their shows are, we go in the back. And so, anyway, I have all these stories. So, so at this thing, this is really funny. So we had front row seats right there, but we didn't want the front row seats because we were just waiting to leave to go.
Yeah.
So we actually decided to go over to the side where, you know, we could go up after their performance. So anyway, there were people behind, so we decided there were some empty seats. So we decided to get out of the way. And so, you know, Michael W. Smith, I think, was doing his first song. And this lady with her kids, where her kids were actually on the side. But so she goes, you can't be there. Those are taken. You know, being just real snotty and nasty. And I wanted to say, you know, we're not here. We're trying to do your kids a favor so they could see. We're not trying to take, and as I was saying it, somebody tapped me on the shoulder and I said, what's the deal? I said, look up on the stage. On the stage, there was a stage manager guy, and I remember what it was. The lady went and got security. That's what it was. She got security. So security was coming to take us out of there.
There's a black man taking our seats.
Well, yeah. So anyway, as the security guy was talking to us, somebody tapped me and said, look on the stage. And I looked, and the security guy looked, and the guy on the stage was, get your hands off him. Get your hands off him.
Yep.
And the guy was doing what? And so he pointed at me, you guys come on. So we go out there, and now everybody's looking. And as we walk up, they open the rail, and we just go walking right next to Michael W. Smith's here saying, and we go walking backstage with
the group.
Yeah, we actually ended up backstage, and there's the DC Talk guys waiting, you know, for us to come. We're hugging and stuff. You know, I know those people just felt stupid. I mean, you know, because
that sounds like your famous Sandy Patty elevator moment.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was on larger scale. It was. So anyway, and then the other one. So they come to Tulsa, and we used to hang out in their dressing room after the show, you know. And so we're in the dressing room, and then that night, what's their names that did Mbop from
Hanson,
the Hanson brothers, and Hanson they were huge DC Talk fans.
Oh yeah.
So we're there, and there's the Hanson guys out there, you know, in the hall when we meet them, you know, and they met the guys. So we go and we're hanging out with the DC Talk. Well, they had to leave; their bus is waiting. So we all go out together, and they open the doors, and there were like hundreds of fans behind rails waiting for them just to come out to get on the bus.
Oh yeah.
And so you know, we walk out with them, and so as we're there waiting for them to get on the bus, and all these people shouting for signatures and autographs, Michael said, "Oh, wait a minute!" He goes in, he gets a pad and a pen, and he comes up to me, "Here, Eddie, give me your address and everything." So I'm there, you know, I'm putting our address down for them to. You know, so he would have our address, and so it just seemed really funny that, like, if the audience people were watching this, did our feed go down?
Nope.
Oh, okay. Anyway, so and it looked like I was signing an autograph for Michael while all these people were there, you know, and he comes running out with his pen and this thing and said, "And please give me your address." And so I do that. I said, okay, so I'm writing my address down, and I give it to him. But anyway, those are some of the funny moments. But anyway, back to the issue of Michael Tate. Really pray for the guy. You know, like I said, I believe he has been a really good guy who's caught up in a terrible thing.
Yeah.
And in a way, it's probably good that it did become public and bring it to a head. There are many people who have gotten caught up in that. Christians. There's a guy, he was out of Oklahoma. He was a Christian artist. I think it was a Christian artist. And somehow he became, he made it public, but he came out basically saying you can be delivered. Mm-hmm. He had a wife and kids and everything later, but I cannot think of his name. It wasn't actually in Tulsa, it was somewhere Muskogee or south of us. Mm-hmm. And so there is hope. Michael Tate's not the only one. Another one that it's like all of the good ones, it seems. Ray Boltz is one, but Ray Boltz, he decided to start and do a homosexual church tour or something, one of those deals. But I don't really know him. He wasn't very nice when I met him anyway, so I didn't feel like a big one. But what I was going to say, one other one that I really, probably my favorite female artist, and who I still think is probably the between her and Sandy Patty, is one of the two greatest Christian female artists, and that was Margaret Becker. Mm-hmm. And then, it turned out she was a lesbian and came out with that. But I toured with these people. I used to be on a train with them on ferries going to Sweden and all the, and we were in a hotel, eat meals together and had great times. I mean,
so it's downtimes between venues that sometimes you really have special moments.
Yeah. And one of the things that was really special, we did a U.S. military tour there. Mm-hmm. So it was when, what was Operation Desert, not Desert Storm, it was Shield, Desert Shield, when they, in the 90s, when all they did, basically, they didn't invade.
Yeah, it was the build-up.
It was
to
the build-up, right.
Storm 1.
Right, exactly. Mm-hmm. And so Margaret ends up going to this Army base in Schweinfurt, Germany, and the place was just packed. Oh, they marched all the guys, told them, we're all going. You got to go. So we're in a movie theater that is just probably had 300-400.
So this is kind of a USO type event.
Right.
Not necessarily USO per se.
Right.
But that type of event.
Right. It was done by the chaplain's office.
Yeah.
Chaplain, as these guys are getting ready to go. And it was funny. I don't know if I told this story, but there were
some song she sang. You told that
right.
story.
Okay, I did tell a story. So anyway, we're in the place, and she sang. It's from the Jeffersons, moving on up.
Yeah, but the long form.
Right, exactly. And all the black soldiers went at first, who's this blue-eyed, blonde, white girl, with a guitar, she ain't got nothing for us, that kind of attitude. And they're just kind of, we're forced to be here. Why do we have to be here? Mm-hmm. And she did. Then she tells the whole story how she took a subway up to Harlem and got out and started walking, and all of a sudden she's telling the story, and she's playing her guitar, and she starts humming and going into this wailing like black gospel singers would do. And all of a sudden these guys just woke up, and by the time it was over, man, they were lining up.
They adopted her, didn't they?
Oh yeah, they were lining up to get it. But she was literally that good,
Yeah, absolutely.
So I see it from a different perspective, and it's hard for me. I tell them in a heartbeat, sorry, but it's wrong. It's no better for you to be doing that than it would be for me.
Yeah, I've got friends who have addictions, whether it's alcohol, drugs. I haven't disowned them. But I don't hang out in that with them either.
Right, exactly.
Bad company corrupts good manners. However, I look at people like, take two of the most respected people in Trump's cabinet. Rick Grinnell.
Right.
Scott Bessent. Both.
Oh, I didn't know Scott was.
Yeah, Scott's
I knew Rick was for years.
Scott's actually, in his confirmation hearings, he talks about how he couldn't live in a certain state at one point because he was married to another man. This is Scott Bassett.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Now,
well, let me ask you this then, just briefly interjecting, because, like, I have a neighbor, and the husband's daughter is a lesbian, and my neighbor it's brought a real rift between us about Trump, not about the gay thing or anything, but I suspect that they have bought into this idea that Republicans are anti-gay.
Yeah, it's Trump derangement kind of thing.
Right, and they take it personal for his daughter. Yeah. That because she's gay, that we've got to be against her, them.
Yeah.
I've met her. We went to breakfast with her because we were going to have her do some advertising for us years ago. And, and it was always nice, cordial. She's a lesbian, and that's her business, So I don't know what it is. And he has recently become a believer, but he goes to this church down on South Memorial, in the Spirit Center. I can't.
Foundations. No, it's Transformation
Church. But they really have this thing now, and the wife and I, we've been debating on Facebook a lot because she's always putting these anti-Republican, anti-Trump, just very strongly. And I don't hesitate to jump in there.
Of course not.
Well, you know me.
You wouldn't be Eddie if you didn't.
Yeah, no, we get in there. And I'm surprised, that they haven't set my yard or house on fire or something, because some of it gets kind of.
Yeah.
But you can tell there's a rift. But I've noticed that there's a spirit among the people, and a lot of times parents that take offense if you're against a situation because it's their child. In other words, they take it personally. It would be like me. There's some, rednecks in Alabama. Let's just pick a state, Mississippi, Alabama. Right? And then all of a sudden, I think everybody from the state is bad.
Yeah.
I hate the state and I hate everything about them and all the people, no matter what you do, just because you live in this state or in this city.
It's clearly a prejudice.
Right, but it's a reverse.
Yeah.
It's a reverse.
It's still prejudice.
I know. And so it really, it's really a tough deal. And see, people don't know me. In fact, I did an interview at KRMG with a former host on KRMG.
Yeah.
And he, we had a discussion, and we both, I told him that my best friend growing up when I was a kid in Philadelphia, he was a choir boy.
Yeah.
And ended up, he was your classic groomed choir boy. They tried to get me to join. My parents didn't have me join. I never joined. Thank God that they didn't, because you find out later that the whole choir boy, they used to go on these summer retreats and stuff, and they were all molested and all turned into gay because it was started when they were like 10 years old.
Prepubescent molestation of a homosexual nature is one of the leading factors that people associate with eventually having this struggle.
Right. But every time I went to Philadelphia, even in college, I would go to Philadelphia and I'd call my buddy Rudy and we'd go to a movie, we'd do things to the point where my aunt and uncle, I think I've told Liz, my aunt and uncle were afraid I was gay, And when I came home once and took out a picture of my girlfriend that I had, my uncle, you should have seen him. It was like, yeah, exactly. And I looked at it, I started cracking up.
Sure.
I started laughing,
Yeah.
But and then I said, oh, by the way, Rudy's coming by in about 20 minutes.
Oh.
and I'll tell you, I have to tell you, I have some crazy stories. You guys,
he does. He really does.
I'm sure people don't believe everything that I tell you, but I promise you, before the Lord, before anything, these are all true. But anyway, so we decided to go to the movies. I think at the time we were 12. I think I was 12. He may have been 13. So we decided to go. First we were asked to sell pretzels at a LaSalle University, which was like 1 block from my uncle's house.
One of the great Catholic universities in Philly area.
Right.
There's a lot of them.
And so they asked us to sell. So we're selling pretzels. We made a little money, and then when we got done, we couldn't find the person. What do we do with all these pretzels? I don't know. So we just threw the boxes that way. And so we decided we're going to the movies. So we're walking down the street. Here comes a panel van. Did I tell you the story? Here comes a panel van. A guy said, "Hey guys, hey, I deliver groceries to lock-ins, not lock-in, what they call them, shut-ins, to elderly that can't get out. So I deliver groceries, and the guys I was supposed to have deliver these groceries, they flaked out on me. So I need a couple of boys to deliver, and I'll pay you." And we looked, yeah, sure, So he opens the panel van.
Get in the van.
We actually got in the van.
I'm cringing to hear the rest of this.
Well, no. So we ended up, we go to whatever the Piggly Wiggly or whatever the store was there, and we deliver these groceries for about an hour or two. Yeah. And he gives us like $20, and we say goodbye. And we go to the movies happily, like 12 and 13-year-old kids. That could have been the last anybody had ever seen of us, But it was, in retrospect, later as I got older and could think about it, God, he has had his hand of protection over me all my life, and that was one of those the stupidest thing as a kid you could ever do. Yeah. And here a panel, no windows, not just jump in the back of this guy's van, and we're cruising out. We don't know where we're going. We don't know what we're doing. And we end up at the store, Oh,
see,
man.
I love this. But at the same time, folks, help me out here. He thinks I'm the reason our show goes 3 hours. Really?
I'm sorry. One thing led to another.
It is, and it's wonderful. Eddie, you're a great conversationalist.
Well,
you really are.
Back to Michael Tate.
Well, but no,
pray for Michael Tate.
Right, and I was making a statement on this. I mentioned Scott Bessent.
Yeah, Scott Bessent.
And Rick Rennell. And then I want to say this, and I hope I do you well, who I'm going to talk about. My younger brother was a seminary student at St. Thomas. They said, you've got things you really need to work through, and they asked him to take a leave. Well, eventually, it's my brother. He now is married to a young man, okay? And, but as he lived at home for the longest time, well into his 40s, taking care of my mother, so widow, right? And so appreciated that. And then my sister, she lives in town with her husband. He's a head of the PE department at the high school and stuff. And his son used to love to go to things, because my younger brother loved the arts, loved going down to the Guthrie Theater for these stage performances and everything. And so this nephew of mine come over Christmas Day, just this last Christmas. I'm at home at my mom's house. And he just got married. He's got his wife there. They're at the time we're expecting. And then my younger brother and his husband, if you will, his partner, were there. And we just started talking about the things of God. Now, they're all Catholic, okay? And I'm talking to my nephew about things because he goes to Latin Mass. He's very traditionalist. Yeah. And in fact, at his wedding was in all Latin. We're all just sitting there. We don't understand Latin, but it's important to him and his wife. And then I mentioned things. I said, John, you were telling me back when you were in seminary about things like the priesthood. They didn't demand celibacy until only about, less than 500 years ago. And John's telling me all these things that he's learned in seminary that they won't teach us in catechism. The other thing he told us, So there's that. He said, really, the first Protestant church, he's the one that told me the first Protestant church was the Roman Catholic. They split off from the Eastern Orthodox church, in Constantinople and all that. And I'm like, I'm hearing this from someone studying for the priesthood. But then we just started talking about how God's working in our lives. John's talking about how he loves his parish down in the Twin Cities area and stuff. And it did not stop us from talking about the things of God in respecting each other's walk with God. And I'm with you, Eddie. I read what the scripture says about moral and right living. But at the same time, when somebody's talking about their walk with God, their struggles to overcome the flesh, as they decide or don't decide to share it with me, I think there has to be a civility in our discourse.
Right. Oh, yeah. I had a son-in-law who was an alcoholic. I may have told this story.
Yeah.
And we had this talk, and I told him, I said, I don't get it. There's two things I don't understand: homosexuality and alcoholism, because I have no attraction to men, no attraction to hard liquor, to the point where, I may have a drink or I may do something to be cordial, or beer, being my German self. So, but there's no desire to get drunk. I've never been drunk, and there's no desire to ever be drunk. And now, I used to get high on marijuana or LSD or one of those other hallucinogenics or whatever. But God delivered me from that. And so there's no attraction any longer to any of that. So I can't relate, but I know it's a problem because I see it. You see it all the time, dealing with the alcoholism in particular. And if you think about it, it's the same with adultery or the sins of the flesh.
Yes.
It's one of those things that it's there.
Yeah.
And it's powerful. And some people, many people, by the grace of God, overcome it. You're able to overcome it. Some people have a harder time, and the worst part of it is that because of the way everything is, in the way we're able to live more privately than we did in the past, I think, in a way, it's kept a secret. Okay, people, can sit in the comfort of their home and watch pornography or have a drink or get high or whatever, and then out in public they can be,
Yeah.
Although it's always been there. It's always, in fact, it seems to me I was easier to have adultery in some cases. Like if a farm way out and nobody knows, and the farmer goes on a trip somewhere that he's gone a long time, and the neighbor could come in and stuff like that. But it's always been there. It's part of the fall, and we have to do two things: do our best to overcome ourselves, and have mercy on and pity on those who are caught up in it. Because I think as soon as what is it? 1 Corinthians 10, I think it is. Let him who who thinketh he standeth take heed lest he fall. It's either 10 or 11. Yeah,
Galatians talks about you who are spiritual, restore them in a spirit of meekness, consider yourself, lest you also fall.
Exactly. And so I think there's two areas that are just as bad. The person caught in the sin who needs to be delivered from the sin, but those who sit there and instead of trying to bind them up, restore them, will sit there and either shun them or complain about them or whatever, rather than trying to to help them. And it's there was a joke years ago. You would relate to this in a way because you were around when Richard Roberts and Patty Roberts were getting a divorce. Mm-hmm. And Richard told the story. This was in CCM magazine. I'll never forget this, but he was talking about this. This elder was the pastor was in a meeting with his deacons and elders, mm-hmm. and he says, "Guys, I just don't know what to do. I can't. You know, it's becoming intolerable to live with this woman mm-hmm. because of the person she is." He said, "But you know, if I divorce her, you know, I don't know what to do. It's like I can't live with her, but I can't see divorcing her." Mm-hmm. And so one of the elders says, "Kill her." He says, "What?" He said, "Yeah, kill her." He said, "They'll forgive you for murder. They'll just never forgive you for divorce." Mm-hmm. And it was kind of a joke, but it's true because we will forgive murderers mm-hmm. before we will forgive, as far as a pastor or a minister. Mm-hmm. It's changed somewhat now, but in the day, you would forgive somebody for murder and pray for their salvation and their mm-hmm. healing and all the restoration, etc. Mm-hmm. But you got a divorce, you can't be a pastor anymore, you can't be this, you can't be, you know, you're basically an apostate, mm-hmm. you know, and we have to rethink how to approach these things, kind of like Jesus did. Mm-hmm. We can't be Jesus because there's only one. But we have to not tolerate evil, mm-hmm. not tolerate sin, but at the same time, we have to have a certain amount of compassion. Mm-hmm. And that's all it is. When somebody is willing to say, "I've fallen, I need help, I can't help myself, I don't know how to go on," we have to be willing to come in mm-hmm. and deal with it. The worst ones, though, are the ones who don't want it. You know, or, you know, don't try to tell me how to live my life. You know, well, you go on then.
Right.
You know, you will have to answer one day to somebody besides me.
Well, yeah, Jesus said to the religious leaders, because you say you have no sin, your sin remains.
Right. But I'm talking about even people, I'm talking about people who are in sin mm-hmm. and basically know their sin. They just don't want to hear from you.
Right.
They want to reject you.
Right. They won't confess their sin
right.
to you.
Well, but even, no, they will confess the sin. Okay. It's public, but they just don't want to hear it. In other words, I'm going to stay in my sin.
You know, and I'll say this in a little bit of defense of that. I will share my struggle with somebody once I'm convinced they care.
But that's you. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
That's you. But yeah, you know, you're right, though. That brings me, boy, this show, as usual, takes a different. Mm-hmm. This is something that I'm in a men's prayer group mm-hmm. at our church.
Yeah.
And we sit around in a circle,
mm-hmm.
you know, and, you know, people will share this and what's going on, and I'm doing this. We're positive things.
Yeah.
But I thought about it. I don't trust anybody in that group enough to really share the deepest or the darkest part of my heart.
Yeah.
And I was thinking on behalf of, I'm looking at there's 30 guys sitting here, and I don't think any of them are willing to, well, I can't say none would, but I would say 80% would not be willing or able to come out and confess their deepest, darkest secrets right. and fears and hurts and sins to that group because we've proven it. Next thing you know, everybody knows. Mm-hmm. Oh, there's so-and-so, there's Dave. Did you know he did this? He's like this. You know, and that's the sad state of the church, that when I got saved years ago and we were just a bunch of little Jesus freaks, teenagers and young adults, I could tell anybody in that group anything. And they would pray with me, they would help me through it, walk me through it, and help me overcome it.
Yeah, but we tend to be more transparent when we're young, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
You know?
yeah. I guess we don't have as much to lose, at least in our minds.
Yeah, that's the thing. And Eddie, I'll say this in defense of that scenario. Trust is something that's earned.
Oh, yeah, sure, exactly,
You know?
yeah.
Forgiveness you owe, but trust they have to earn. And Eddie, if you're like me and everybody I know, the actual number of people you can trust to that level, you can count on one hand.
Yep.
You know, that's the nature of things. And I don't know that that's not the way it should be.
No,
I mean,
think that's how
yeah,
it
you're
should
right. In the ultimate sense, we get to heaven, everybody knows, right? There's no secrets. But here, we're not there yet.
Right,
And-
but we're supposed to seek to be. Well, actually, I kind of have to disagree because we have been transformed. Talks about when we're transformed from the kingdom of this world to the kingdom of that world.
Right.
So actually, we are living in a different. I have a whole thing. You know, I write a lot of things
in
that
here,
people don't ever see.
In here, that's true. But up here,
no, not even. I don't even say it here. Well, yeah, in a sense. But what I'm saying is, if we truly are in the kingdom of God when we accept Christ, okay, we're ambassadors, right? So we're actually, okay. So even though we're as Larry Norman said, visiting this planet, which is appropriate, our ultimate government and rule and allegiance is to our home, which is in heaven. Okay, so, excuse me. So anyway, but that's how we should live. And if we did live and could, but the problem is, I'm just going to say it from my point of view. I don't know who my fellow citizens really are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And those fellow citizens, I don't trust enough.
Yeah.
And that's why I think going back to our initial issue, talking about Michael Tate, who does he have? You know, the band, of course, immediately, you know, takes the record label. I think we've had this discussion before, like with Stryper and Michael English. They're ready to pull all your music off the shelves and shun you. And a promoter, you can't perform, you can't do this anymore. You kill the livelihood.
That's the business side of things.
Exactly. And but the way it's done, there's one way to do it on the business side, but at the same time do it in a Christian manner.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is lacking a lot. And to me, it's hypocritical because there are certain artists that we know of their foibles and issues, but they're still promoted heavily and always written about and talked about.
Because those are approved sins.
Yeah.
But let me tell a very hard-hitting story that happened right here in Tulsa just a month before I came down here in 1980. Keith Green was invited to do a concert at Oral Roberts University. And that turned into a revival service.
Right, I remember.
A young student responded. Several responded to, he just said, I feel it's a time, Keith Green says, it's time for a confession of sins. And people just openly confess their sins. And a young man eventually had a microphone and talked about a homosexual relationship. He's a student at ORU. That's immediate grounds for expulsion from school. Right after he's telling us, I mean, you could hear a pin drop, right? And Melody Green talks about this in the book that she wrote about her husband's ministry. Said, I think it was the dean's office or someone, shut down the meeting right there. Because all of a sudden now they got a mess to deal with, and how are they going to deal with this? Somebody's repentant, publicly humbled themselves, and we're going to kick them out of school for it. See, this is where there's just something not right here.
Well, no, that's what I say. It's like, remember, I think it was last week or week before where I talked about Bob Mumford.
Yeah.
And he said, we sing the song Onward Christian Soldier. We talk about Christian soldiers, but we're the only army when our wounded come back from the battle, we finish them off. We don't bind the wounds, we finish them off. Exactly. And that is a problem. That is a problem. And whereas in Calvary Chapel back in the, if you've seen the movie Jesus Revolution with Calvary Chapel and the different branches, it wasn't like that. If you saw a brother or sister with issues or problems, you just realized, man, we got to get them back.
Yeah.
What can we do? What can we do to help Jimmy or Susie or whoever? What can we do to restore them?
Yeah.
That's how it used to be it was a limited period of time, but
it's the business side of the church that we often have these problems. Richard Roberts will say this, knew he had all kinds of scandals, and he had his sister-in-law kind of catalog them and deal with, so they could keep all of them straight. They had so many.
Was this the lawyer?
Yeah, and John Scales, all of a sudden, a student gets a hold of this because I guess he was asked to repair this laptop. And he says, look what's on here. Scales takes it to the Board of Regents. Boom, wrong move. They're all invested in Richard Roberts and this whole thing, and they make this man pay a price. They ultimately fire him and two other professors. I'm riding on Gary Richardson's campaign bus for his kickoff, and I'm sitting by John Scales. I says, how did you get to know Gary? He says, Richard Roberts recommended him. I said, he did? So, yeah, he says, I hate Gary Richardson. Because Gary was, but now that ended Richard Roberts' reputation, effectiveness here in Tulsa. Last I heard that he and his second wife moved to Florida, Lindsay. Patty Roberts, who was exiled, you probably run into her. She lives here in Tulsa. She's now married to one of her teammates on the World Action Singers, that woman's ex-husband. The woman, she divorced her husband, and he's a friend of mine. An old friend, I would say. Right. And he's now a retired Methodist minister. So it's funny how things, comes around full circle. Patty's in town, Richard's gone.
Yeah. You know that ORU has one of the largest divorce rates.
Yes.
What do you call it? Proportionately, among universities or institutions. And I figured out why it is.
Tell me.
It's because there's a lot of lust in college.
Oh, yeah.
And so these people think that to keep from lusting, we'll just get married. Mm-hmm. So they get married very young, sometimes while they're still in school or shortly thereafter, and they weren't ready, and it wasn't the right person. The only thing you wanted to do is make it official to keep it from being your fornication from being sin.
That's actually scriptural, though.
You get married. Yeah.
If you can't contain yourself, get married.
Right.
Better to marry than to burn.
Right, but it's not saying don't marry just anybody.
That's not the strongest foundation for a marriage.
Right. It's not the context, I think, of the situation. In a Jewish situation where guys are in this long stand, they have a long engagements and all that kind of stuff. And so you're just sitting there and trying to keep from fornicating, So,
I've got another theory on it. And this actually comes from some alumni, ORU. And back in the 80s, they went there and graduated. They said, here's the deal. You're living in a false environment. The dress code there, everybody looks sharp and snazzy. Yeah. At that time, women had to wear dresses or skirts. The guys had to wear tie. Shirt and tie. And everybody had to be in a fitness program and meet certain guidelines or they're in the fat class. Right? And you had this image of, oh, I love this man. He's so neat and tidy, and he goes to church every week, which is required as well. And he's dressed like, and he's so hunk of a man, and all this. And they get out of that environment and out of that external discipline, and we don't know if they have internal discipline. And the women as well.
Right.
And yeah, it's a really big problem.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's church wide, you know, and I think it's still there.
Yeah. Now, Jim and Tammy Baker, for instance, they were at North Central Bible College, Assembly of God, Minneapolis, and they were in lust, and they secretly got married. And that is automatic grounds for expulsion from school if you get married without the college's approval. Yeah.
So the college picks your spouse for you.
They don't pick your spouse.
They approve of the spouse.
You have to go through all the hoops they make you jump through.
Right.
Yeah. And so, Eddie, I like going to this little home fellowship church. And to me, that's a more pure church. It doesn't have the trappings of business.
Yeah, but see, I'm not saying don't have a home church. No, I'm totally a freedom guy. Okay, if that works for you, but that's no excuse for the mainline churches or the larger churches. But see, and no matter what, like I said, Calvary Chapel was truly, I believe, a godsend. It was an honest touch of God.
Yeah.
But even that got corrupted down the line.
Yeah, there's no perfect church.
Right.
There won't be on earth.
I went to Melody Land Christian Center. It was incredible. It was great. Boom. The seminary I went to started out greatest ideals, goals, etc. And after so many years, it's because wherever God is moving, Satan moves with and does his. That's what we want to. That's what we want to hear.
I'm just
that's
saying the business side of things a lot of times becomes a challenge.
You're right. And what becomes the challenge is simply that you don't want to hurt your business. In other words, we see some success, and if we do this, we'd have to start all over again, or it's going to hurt our bottom line. Right.
Yeah,
No,
there's no perfect church. I see some things in different organizations. So, I kind of like that there. I don't like what you guys have become, but here's one aspect I like. Well, I'm going to say this. I'm going to get you stoked up here, baby. One of the things the Mormons do, other than their temple in Salt Lake City, nobody makes a living off the ministry. I mean, Mitt Romney served a stint as a bishop. One of my longtime customers, great family here in town, he served his stint as a bishop. And you don't have those trappings of, I got to protect my career. And it would surprise you how much that influences.
Right. But at the same time, they still do things to protect the group.
Yeah.
And so you still end up doing crazy things. Like, we see different movies. The Amish, same thing with the Amish.
Right.
No matter, there's a TV show, probably one of the roughest shows on TV ever. It's called Banshee. And it was about the Mennonites. And there was this one Mennonite guy who fell away from and he was the number one mobster in, he ran this whole criminal organization there in Pennsylvania.
The Amish Mafia.
Which is crazy, to think about it. But I don't care who they are. They all have it. In fact, I understand. I mean, I've heard rumors of being a Mormon hit squads and things, to do things to try to.
And Eddie, that's the beauty of C.S. Lewis' great work, Mere Christianity.
Yeah, mere. That's it. Simple, plain, simple Christianity.
Yeah. He doesn't defend any denomination. or any this, that, or structured, rituals, rites. It's just you and Jesus.
That's one reason that me being a former Catholic, I consider myself a Catholic plus, actually. But what's the old saying about the Democrat Party? I didn't leave the party left me.
Yeah.
I didn't leave the Catholic Church, the Catholic Church left me.
Right. But look at your missionary work. Were they building churches, denominations? Is YWAM another No. My son spent half a year over in Russia because he was able to reach people that the Russian Orthodox Church wasn't, because the people down there in the Caucasus associated the Orthodox Church with Moscow in politics and communism. And they were rejecting that control. So they rejected the God that they preach. So here he comes in, preaching just you and Jesus, and a bunch of people get saved.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's right. And the thing about YWAM, we would have Catholic, from Catholic to Pentecostal.
Yeah.
And everything in between.
Some of those Catholics were Pentecostal too.
Well, yeah.
Charismatics.
Yeah. But we're talking like official, like in Austria, which is heavily dominated by the Catholic Church, more than Germany even. And they did all the work through the Catholic Church, and the Catholic Church opened it up and let them go out and evangelize and stuff. There's so many things, but getting back to the original thing, again, with this Michael Tate revelation and confession and everything, we just have to be more gentle and forgiving, but forgiving with conditions. And I'm sorry, you've got to have conditions. There's conditions on everything. In other words, the weather conditions outside are not conducive for golf, okay?
No, we heard it, thunder booming.
And lightning. And so life is about conditions. And anytime you try to get away, I'm totally free, I don't want to live under these rules or conditions, you can't do it. It's like a fish saying, I'm going on land to live because I don't want to be constricted by this water. Sorry, but you will die. Okay, so these are things we have to. But in the midst of that, we need to forgive, to love, to care, and continue to educate and help people. And so I think we'll move on from there. I think we've beaten that horse. As usual, we've taken
Michael Tate. God bless.
We pray for you.
Lean on Jesus. He's there. He'll never leave you and never forsake you.
Amen. I doubt Michael will see this, but who knows? Hey, the big news of the week, well, actually there's two things, but let's start with the really big one, I think, and that is the Iran-Israel conflict going on. So a couple of nights ago, Israel finally decided to attack Iran. And in the middle of it, they killed 20 of their top commanders. I mean, that's amazing. I mean, that they took out.
That's a Mossad operation.
Well, yeah, sure. Within, they say their operatives have been living in Iran for a long time. And just, it's amazing how they're able to do that.
They knew which window to aim that bomb in that hardened apartment complex. It's all cinder block walls, but they knew which window. Yeah. It was a surgical strike.
In addition to commanders, some of those killed were scientists, nuclear scientists working on the nuclear project. Then they took out their nuclear sites that they know of. And so I guess ever since then, Iran has been sending their little missiles over to Israel, and that Iron Dome has been in operation now for 2 days, shooting them down as much as it can.
Let's talk about one of the first U.S. presidents to do a preemptory hit like that. Actually, it was Bill Clinton. And it was already known that the Iranians were developing. And Bill Clinton wanted to do something, but he didn't want anybody to get hurt. So he blew it up at night when only janitors got killed. And all the scientists survived. Yeah. Think about that.
Yeah. That's kind of stupid.
That's his mentality.
You save the innocent. I mean, you save the guilty and kill the innocent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he thought, well, if I just blow up the building, the whole program will be gone. Well, that didn't work.
No.
But, good janitors, they leave their kids orphans. And, meanwhile, the nuclear scientists just keep going on and on. Now, I know we had an incident a couple of years ago of a big-time disaster at one of these research facilities. And it's believed Mossad had something to do with that. All of a sudden, there was some explosion and a whole bunch of scientists died. And they kept it hush.
Well, a few more died now.
Yeah.
Recently. So.
I'm hearing about 78 reported dead on the ground in Iran as of yesterday afternoon. Now, some of those were military leaders, high military leaders.
Oh, yeah, 20 commanders. Right. 20 commanders.
Right. So then, and I'm sure, probably somebody's spouse, because they got bombed at 2 a.m.
Yeah, that's what nobody's mentioning. But yeah, I would imagine.
And so what Israel then said is, you come after our civilian population, we will come after political leaders. We have not gone after your ayatollahs or your prime minister or anyone like that. Now, remember, they have a 2-stage deal where their judicial department is this Islamic council that can veto anything that the secular leadership does.
Right.
So if you really want to take out the head of the state, you have to go after the religious organization.
Exactly. That's what I was saying at this breakfast we talked about earlier, privately. Mm-hmm. Anyway, that until you take out the ayatollahs, you're not getting to the root of the problem.
Yeah.
You got to start taking out these ayatollahs and say, you exist at our privilege.
Yeah.
Bottom line.
I mean, you've got a council of people in black robes. People say our Supreme Court's just like that because anything our president Congress does, they can veto it too.
Right.
How are we any different, right?
Secular thinking, but
yeah. But so now I think as a result of, we saw 3 waves come in yesterday, our time, afternoon and into the evening. I think the last batch I saw come in was around 11 our time. So I think it's on.
Oh, yeah.
But here's the next thing. Israel has moved land troops across their borders into nations that they have been at war with. Lebanon, Syria, Jordan. Right. I mean, West Bank was all Jordan.
That's true.
Right? Mm-hmm. In Egypt. How do you conduct an occupying force over in Iran? How do you even accomplish regime change? I don't think they're even thinking it's plausible, and that's why I think you're seeing the narrative, not just with Trump, but with Netanyahu, speaking to the Iranian people. Say, you've got to take your country back.
Yeah. Right.
And I think that's a winning strategy.
No, I agree. That's what's got to happen because there is a lot of unrest. There are a lot of unhappy people in Iran. They just can't do anything about it.
Yeah. They've tried to, but they haven't had help. Obama had a wonderful opportunity.
They killed a lot of the last protesters and dissidents just a couple of years ago. I remember there's one woman, there's like documentaries out on it, but until you take out what they call religious leaders of Iran, you're not going to be able to get to the heart of the problem.
Yeah.
And that's just how it is. So anyway,
okay, I've got to do a little housekeeping here. We're having a problem with our video feed, so I'm glad we're recording because we may not have anything going on.
Okay,
here.
It's probably the lightning in the.
Don't know.
Or or cloud cover that.
Yeah.
Messing with the signal.
So I don't know. Is there anything more to say about that? I think
no, because it's such an active, as they say, active shooter situation where it's changing all the time. I believe instead of de-escalation, I see escalation happening. Iran is, I think, deep down, I think they're hoping China and Russia will come to their aid.
Yeah.
So we do have an opportunity to see a major world conflict building. But I think that's why I don't think Israel should goof around. They need to take out the heart of the leadership, the real leadership, not these military people, because all that's going to happen is you're going to have new ones. Like you were talking about the scientists before. You kill a bunch of janitors. And so what we've done, we've killed a bunch of janitors. Okay, we may call, like you were talking about the scientists before, you kill a bunch of janitors. And so what we've done, we've killed a bunch of janitors. Okay, we may call them military leaders, commanders, but they're janitors basically. And the actual staff, the people that run things, it's the Ayatollahs and the religious leaders. And until you deal with that, but I think Israel, to some extent, are still worried about the world outcry, that if they were to start taking out Ayatollahs and the religious leaders, then these people, the usual names are going to scream and whine and cry, They already are. I mean, and which will lead into our next discussion, and that is the unrest here in America, which basically is about the Palestinians, the no kings.
That's about the immigration and the illegals being deported.
Well, yeah.
It's all morphed, isn't it?
Exactly. I think because they're still out there wearing, on the East Coast, you still got the issue of that. Mm-hmm. The legal issue is more the Los Angeles and the Southwest. Mm-hmm. The people in New York really don't care a whole lot about kicking Mexicans out or Guatemalans. Or
I think you've got critical mass in Los Angeles. So much of that population, right. People snuck over.
Right. And bottom line, honestly, it's really not about either one of those issues. The real issue is you have some anti-faith, Republican government, or a truly republic. When I say Republican, I don't mean party. Anti-Republican mentality. Mm-hmm. You have people that want to. What did Obama say? What was his famous saying? He wants to see us fundamentally change, transform America. Mm-hmm. And what he would fundamentally change us into is hell, basically. Mm-hmm. They have no clue of what they're talking about. Mm-hmm. Okay, it's the things that caused the French Revolution to be a failure and still a failure here now, 300 years, 400 years later. It's things that caused the Russian Revolution to fail. It's because they have the wrong. You cannot let people that aren't gifted in something run your nation. If you look at Asia, the Cambodian situation with Pol Pot, the Vietnam, Thailand, Thailand was right, but Laos. You have these revolutionary leaders that come up and talk a good game, but bottom line, they're just idiots that with a gun. Idiots with a gun.
Yeah, they're more concerned about controlling a nation than elevating it.
Right, and in the end, what happens? All they do is elevate themselves.
Well,
and they have to get harder and harder to oppress the people to keep them from trying to get back to.
Do you remember there was a famous movie? I think it won an Academy Award about what happened, the killing fields.
Right.
And this doctor dressed up as an orderly when the was it Khmer Rouge came in?
Yeah, come here,
To
Cambodia.
the operating room. And he's the surgeon. And he said, looking for doctor, run that way, and he escaped.
Mm-hmm.
He was the doctor.
Yeah.
But here's my point. These thugs are intimidated by educated people. That's why they get rid of them.
Yeah, exactly. The Chinese Revolution, right?
Yes.
They killed all the professors and leaders.
Yeah, the Cultural Revolution.
The Cultural Revolution.
Yeah. And so, yeah, and I have to say, I mean, today is not without its death toll. What happened in Minneapolis.
No. Let's get to Los Angeles, though. Okay.
Sure.
Okay. And today we're supposed to have this No Kings movement all over, including Tulsa. There's supposed to be rallies here in Tulsa. I saw the map they showed on Fox with all these dots of where it's going to be. And the whole map is just covered with these dots, And, but this is nothing more and nothing less than the French Revolution all over again. And the Asian Revolution back, in the 60s, that 50s and 60s, South America, we've seen it happen, the coups down there. You have people, power-hungry people that want to have it their way, and they don't care who they hurt, who they kill, who they damage, what they do. They just want their people to be in power. Mm-hmm. And it's sad. It's sad that, and it shows that the universities, because a lot of this is fostered at supposedly institutions of learning that have quit focusing on learning.
Yeah. They're more into
true education. Yeah. True education. And I'll tell you what I think it is. This might hurt a little bit, Dave.
Here we go.
I think we've learned as much about psychology and sociology as we're ever going to be able to learn. Okay. And so you get to a point where you don't have anything new.
Yeah.
So what do? You start morphing the old that you have in new directions.
And you hope people forget what they learned so you can pull it over on them again.
Yeah, that's true.
Because we keep forgetting the lessons we learned the hard way.
It's just a different dress.
Yeah.
Different color dress.
No,
yeah.
I agree with you.
Okay. So anyway, so we have these institutions, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Columbia, Cornell, these supposedly vaunted institutions of higher learning, which are dropping the ball. Mm-hmm. Whereas, you can have a smaller college, you can have, Liberty University. Let's use that one, or what's the one up in? There's one in Rhodes College up in Kansas.
Yeah,
is Rhodes in Kansas? Or is that the one? No, I think Rhodes is further east. I can't remember. There's one. There's several of these colleges that are actually still concentrating on teaching people how to learn, how to do reading, writing, arithmetic, sciences, all of the basic things that you can actually, in nuclear, nuclear physics.
Well, in the old-fashioned liberal arts education, such as Hillsdale College.
Yeah, Hillsdale's another one.
Yeah.
But even some that aren't such liberal, that have an emphasis on science and engineering. Mm-hmm. There are new breakthroughs in the areas of science and engineering.
Oh, yeah.
The funny thing is, though, a lot of the things, for example, Stephen Jobs, not Spielberg, what's the Berg? Eisenberg? No, what is the head of Facebook?
Oh, Zuckerberg.
I knew it was a Berg.
Zuckerberg,
yeah. A lot of these guys never finished their college education.
Right.
And I don't think even Bill Gates, I don't even think
Gates had 1 year at Harvard. Zuckerberg, I believe, had 2.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And even Steve Jobs had 1 or 2.
At Berkeley.
He had Berkeley?
I think it's Berkeley, yeah.
But you're finding that these guys this is what's crazy. Most of these people start getting their ideas and working on the things when they're 12 years old, 11 and 12 years old. But I have to
tell you, Jobs was not the scientific guy. Steve Wozniak was the geek. It's just the marketing side of it was Steve Jobs.
It's funny because that's how Edison was. Edison dropped out of school when he was 11 years old. He started working on the railroad, on trains. And he was just a capitalist, basically figuring out how to make money. And he would buy these patents and these things and get the good people to work for him.
Like Tesla.
Right. And so these institutions of higher learning are not focusing on learning anymore. They're more focused on reshaping society. That's what they're really concentrating on. And that's sad. In fact, are you familiar with what Oculus? Have you heard of Oculus?
I have.
It's the 3V.
That's right. Yeah.
The 3V. And I put it on my mother. I put it on my mother one time. She can believe it. What is it? Because it is truly amazing, Well, anyway, the guy who created Oculus, his name was Palmer Luckey. Two last names, basically, Palmer Luckey. And Palmer has Zuckerberg stole the business from it. They bought it into it and then had him work for Facebook, and then they fired him. But he's the one who developed it. But if you read his book, I listened to the audiobook on my way up to Kansas University one time, and listened to it on the way up and back. Amazing book. I can't remember the name of it right now, but he was like when he was 12 years old, and his parents had a camper trailer, mobile home or something, but it was on their front yard. Sounds like a poor white trash yard.
Yeah.
That's what I'm picturing in my mind. It's but he actually lived out in that, and he started with, remember Commodore 64?
Yes.
He had 2 or 3 Commodore 64s that he got, put them all together, and started working on this 3V idea. And finally, it's a long story, a long haul, getting people involved that he would meet with and get to invest in this. And then finally, they came out with Oculus and this 3V goggles. And, it's been further developed. Well, Palmer Luckey, once he got fired from Facebook, he didn't put his tail between his legs and whimper off into what does he do? He keeps working. Well, what he did for the Trump administration and subsequently, even since then, they have these towers now. There's a thing called, you have virtual reality. And then there's another one. Darn it, I cannot think of the name of it. Augmented reality.
Yeah.
And augmented reality, I believe, is where you actually can control things at a distance.
Yeah, I think you're seeing things that are actually there.
Right.
With things added, they give you insights that you wouldn't otherwise know.
Thank you, Professor Van Risingham.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they have this border security where they have these satellites, drones.
Okay.
And the drones in these towers in areas where the Border Patrol can't patrol. So these things are set up and they see things and can alert, and they can, speak and speak to them.
For instance, in that where you might be at a tower as Border Patrol and you see, a dip over a hill, if you're looking at it, it might tell you that ground dips down 15 feet, but only for a short time. So you know how big of a valley it is that you can't see.
Right.
So you got these notes, and it'll put notes all over your viewing panorama.
Right. But it will also alert them that there's human traffic coming across the border, or approaching the border. And then they can send the patrols out. But anyway, he's developed that whole thing and so much more. In fact, he was just on this week with Maria Bartiromo.
I'm sure the military's put that to use for battlefield.
Yeah, oh yeah. And he said there's new things that he can't even talk about.
Yes.
But it just shows that he never went to college, period. He never went to any college, anybody's college.
Right.
And yet he is one of the most brilliant scientists or tech scientists that we have.
Abe Lincoln never went to high school.
Right. And he's continually developing new things. He keeps we've got the 3D virtual stuff now. What's next? Mm-hmm. What's next? Tesla, Elon. Mm-hmm. Elon's never satisfied. Yeah. PayPal, Tesla, what's the SpaceX, this.
Yeah. My oldest son, worked for a while in marketing for Oral Roberts University. They had to make exception to hire him because he didn't have even an associate's degree. Mm-hmm. He just knew marketing on the web so well. They really wanted somebody with a master's. One of the conditions of his employment, he was there 2 years, so he couldn't tell anybody that
he didn't have
because the narrative of higher ed is you can't amount to anything until you pass our muster, right, pay us our tuition and all this. And that ain't true. Mm-hmm. And when the secret of that gets out, I mean, you're just talking about all these self-made people who didn't kiss rings. Now Elon Musk actually went to Wharton. I mean, you don't get a better school than Wharton. Trump was a graduate of Wharton. That's a graduate degree, University of Penn, Ivy League.
Business school.
Right. But there's so much that people can do if they just understand and learn how to learn. You don't have to pay those tuitions. Those tuitions for people that need somebody to guide them by the hand.
Yeah, but at the same time, you still need money. So, for example, Palmer Luckey found people that believed in his vision to help him pull this off.
Right. Apple couldn't get off the ground until, who was it? Some investment house, I'm trying to remember who it was, just showed up at Wozniak's garage. Said, hey, we want to invest in you. Like, how'd you even find out about us? Yes, you need to attract funds. Even Sam Walton. Mm-hmm. It took all kinds of stuff to get Wall Street investors to come out to Bentonville.
Didn't he have 100 people invest so much in it initially? Maybe it's more than 100, probably more than 100 until they went public. When it's private, he had all these people, because I was reading somewhere that everybody who invested, $500 or more in Walmart initially ended up becoming multimillionaires.
Yeah, if you were a stockholder, even one share, you were invited out to a special week-long event up in the Ozarks, and he would put together the most amazing whitewater rafting, trout fishing, all these things. And these investors from lower Manhattan, these Orthodox Jewish guys, would come back and say, I had the most fun time I've ever had at a stockholder meeting. And the word got out. And you got to get money. You got to get capital.
Well, this was even before the stockholders. I mean, this is just people in the town that believed in Sam's vision and invested in Walmart.
Right. And every employee had stock options. He got them to invest.
Yeah. Which reminds me, it takes me, I didn't have this prepared, but apparently his daughter, one of Sam's daughters, is a super liberal.
Of course.
And she is now backing this No Kings protest this weekend. Yeah. So, I'm not going to tell you to do it, but if you should happen to want to, I'm planning on boycotting Walmart. So, Sam.
It's nice how you went straight so far off of our topic of the No Kings protest. You eventually walked right back in.
Yeah. But it's called the No Kings, and All it is another, it was Black Lives Matter a few years ago. Last year, it was the Palestinian Liberate Palestine deal, and it's still lingering on. Now it's No Kings about the immigration. It's the same animal with a different name.
Yeah, we've seen this. We've seen this strategy before.
Exactly.
But I have to tell you, I mean, this is part of it. The first thing that kicked it off today was the warning shot. Leftist Democrats don't leave the reservation. Here's what I'm talking about. The Minnesota legislature, as of this last election, was tied in the House, the State House of Representatives,
right,
67 apiece. Somehow through negotiating, somebody voted for the Republican out of the Democrat. And anyway, the Republicans took over the House, even though they're tied 67 apiece. It's an even number, not a smart move to organize that way. So the woman who was the speaker, the Democrat speaker, Melissa Horton, from the northern edge of the Minneapolis-St. Paul metro area. The biggest bill that came in that shook a lot of people up was after going through years of the Democrats controlling the governor's office and both houses of the legislature, all of a sudden, they struck the funding of illegal immigrants from getting state Medicaid. And Melissa Horton, former Democrat speaker, voted with the Republicans. Now, I'm not saying this is why she's dead, but some people are saying, and I'm reading on national news, that's a plausible scenario. Because, you and I get upset with rhinos, right? Well, it's only logical that leftists get upset with
and dinos.
Yes, Democrats who leave the reservation leave the woke ideology, which is huge up there in the Twin Cities area. And last night, evidently, she comes to the door, her husband with her. This is up in Champlain. She's way on the outskirts of the Twin Cities metro. I used to live in Champlain for a short period of time. Tiny town, across the river from Anoka. And a cop with armor, he had chest over his uniform, shoots and kills both husband and wife.
Right.
The speaker and her husband.
Right.
Then, not 10 minutes later, down in Brooklyn Park.
Champlain.
Well, no, she's in Champlain.
Here it says that John Hoffman and his wife were also shot in Champlain.
Okay. Then I'll have to check on that. But basically, it's two districts right next to each other.
Right. Emerita Melissa Horton and her husband were killed in Brooklyn Park.
Okay, they're in Brooklyn Park. That's right. He's up in Champlain. Now, Horton and her husband are dead.
Right.
As this morning. I think this other guy, right, Hoffman,
right,
is still hanging on, and you're saying his spouse was shot too.
Right. Yeah, they shot both.
So there's 4 people shot. The gunman is described as white with, I think, brown hair, and they didn't have too much more descriptive. They said he's wearing a blue law enforcement, with the chest body armor. That's all they know. Now,
did Hoffman also vote against?
Thank you for saying that, because that's the thing that doesn't stay consistent. He did not vote against it. But hey, they just died. I believe they're done, just like Oklahoma. They have spring session, winter, spring. And I don't know what all the politics are. But up there, their version of the Democrat Party is called the Democrat Farmer Labor. I grew up going to all their meetings because my dad was big in the Democrat Farmer Labor. And, I don't know. But here's the strange thing. You've got Trump won, what was it, 81 out of 88 counties in Minnesota and still lost the state. Yeah.
It's because Minneapolis.
It's
right?
just like your hometown, Philly, because most of Pennsylvania will vote conservative,
Right.
and then Philly just floods it and wins the state, you know? So that's what's going on there. You've got about 5 metro area counties there, and then a couple other, counties that you might still go Democrat. But the rest of the state, like my home county, 74% vote for Trump. 74%. So it is a state at war within itself. The metro versus outstate.
Yeah, well, yeah, sure. I mean, because that's where Ilhan Omar is from, Minnesota.
Exactly.
And you've got that huge Ethiopian migrant community there.
Somalian,
right. This is what I don't understand, okay? You talk about ingratitude.
Mm-hmm.
How can you come from a blank hole country, as Trump would call it,
mm-hmm.
to a place where they're giving you basically the golden key,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And then you want to sit there and come against that country that takes you in. It's like Rush Limbaugh used to play the song about the woman and the snake.
Mm-hmm.
That she went to sleep with the snake. She thought it was pretty. She nursed it back to health. It was an injured snake, and she took it. It was freezing, I guess, and she took it in, made it comfortable, and ended up sleeping with the snake. And the snake, it's a venomous, poisonous snake, and ends up killing her. And she said, "Why would you?" And the snake tells her, "It's because." Silly woman, I'm a snake. This is what I do.
You knew what it was.
Yeah, you knew what I was. You took me in.
Yeah.
But you would think that these are supposed to be the people that were starving.
Right.
They couldn't do anything. They were under an oppressive government, et cetera, et cetera. And then you are saved out of that, given an opportunity for the second highest office in the country, basically. And then what do? You want to pee on the country, the people that did it.
You got three organizations responsible for this. Mm-hmm. One, USAID. Okay. Money funneled to 2 supposedly religious groups, Lutheran Social Services and Catholic Charities. And I'm telling you, they're at war. Growing up,
are they at war with each other or at war with the country?
At war with the people, the native Minnesotans.
Right.
Because they're teaching these people hate. I mean, you go down to the south part of Jinx at Churchill Park, there's a massive amount of Burmese just down here.
Right.
And I've talked to the neighbors. They said it's destroyed the neighborhood. They hate the rest of the neighborhood. And this is in Jinx, Oklahoma. You can see it all over.
So
they don't want to become part of the culture they moved to.
Yeah.
They despise them.
Well, then we need to change the way we bring in people.
Exactly.
That if you don't want to accept the culture, and
you and I have a massive federal debt that's paid for this.
Right.
We're paying for our own undoing.
Right. Yeah, exactly. We're giving them the ammunition. Right.
Yeah. And the saying used to be about my home state of Minnesota. It's called Minnesota nice. I mean, folks, they're just polite. It ain't that way anymore. It ain't that way. It's sad. Now, you go to rural Minnesota, and it's much like you remember it from decades past. But the Twin Cities, I'm sorry, you remember even before the George Floyd incident, Trump did a rally in downtown Minneapolis at the Target Center, and it was violent. And the mayor of the city, a leftist, Fry, refused to let his police officers attend in uniform. Trump had to issue a few hundred shirts that these cops could identify themselves as cops while they're at his rally. The cops loved Trump. the leftist politicians hate Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the enmity between law enforcement and the leftists. And I'm telling you, I don't think it's by mistake that the murderer, the hitman, dressed up as law enforcement. I think you got some radicalized leftist woke activist decided he'd do this for the team as a warning to the woke leftist group. Don't you stray from the ideology. That's what I think. Now, again, this is just theory. I could be all wrong. I hate it when people make presumptions. But I'm saying this is, at this point, a plausible narrative.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tragic anyway. Which brings me to another related topic in a sense, and that is John Fetterman.
Yeah.
John Fetterman seems to be distancing himself more and more from mainstream Democrat politics. He's the guy we fought against.
We thought he was the worst embarrassment to the Democrat Party.
Well,
he is.
Well, to
them.
To them he is for now. Yeah, definitely, because he is bucking the system that they want.
He's done Joe Manchin's what he's done.
Yeah. But, it's like his brain surgery or whatever happened with his brain, it kind of straightened it out. Because remember, we thought that he had lost his mind, but instead now he's the only rational thinking Democrat politician you have out there. And he's fearless. He doesn't care. The funniest scene was once he was coming out from the Capitol, going to his car, and there were all these anti-Israeli protesters, and he has this little Israeli flag, and he's walking. As he walks, and he holds this thing, he's doing this while he's walking to his car, like supporting Israel, And it's just amazing to me how you can have that happen. And you talk about regret. I think the Democrats are regretting the fact, he goes to the White House and meets with Donald Trump and says we had a good meeting. I mean, he's saying all the things that cause them to just hate him, But bottom line, is he serving the people, his constituents? That's the bottom line, and I think it is. So, I want to throw this in there real quick. This relates to the L.A. riots. And KTLA, KT Los Angeles, is an affiliate of the CW. I didn't know that, but it's a local station affiliated with the CW, Channel 19 here in Tulsa, by the way, that I never watched. Do you ever watch Channel 19?
I watch all the live golf tournaments on it.
Oh, the live golf. Yeah, I guess maybe I have turned.
Yeah, they had the rights to live golf.
Oh, okay.
That was a big coup.
Yeah, but I think Fox now has taken some of those. I think I saw one.
Well, yeah, because they saw CW making mint on
There's
that.
gold in them there hills. Yeah,
That's
it's true. It's true. But anyway, KTLA 5 had reported on Thursday night that the U.S. Citizen mother of 4, Sabrina Medina, was in the shower at 6 a.m. on the day when she realized her house was surrounded by several vehicles of ICE. DHS responded with an ex post the following day, fake news. Now, here's what she says. She was just terrified because ICE was coming after her, for no reason. She's a citizen and she's an innocent mother of 4, et cetera, et cetera. They mentioned that. What KTLA did not mention is that, and DHS responded with the truth. And do you know Bill Malugin? He's a Fox reporter.
Okay.
He's a good guy, one of the good guys.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, anyway, he wrote that he attended the ICE raid. He was there with it, and Kristi Noem. They were out there when this happened, and said they weren't targeting a pregnant mother, which is what KTLA was trying to.
Of course. There you go.
It was targeting her previously deported illegal alien Mexican husband who had been already convicted, not accused of, but convicted of drug trafficking and attempted murder charge that he pleaded down to an assault conviction. So here's an illegal Mexican alien that ICE was coming after, who had already been convicted. He was not only an illegal alien.
You said he was deported.
No.
Okay,
no, he has not been deported.
Okay,
no.
So that's why they're coming. They believe that guy's in.
He had been previously deported, but came back.
Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
that's the second time.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Oh, a
now
lot
that
of these people they're getting have been here multiple times. They've been deported, and they just keep coming back in. But anyway, that's who they were after to get him, not her. But KTLA comes up with this story, whiny, crying story. Oh, this poor ICE is after this poor mother of four, pregnant mother of four, and they've just disrupted her whole family, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, it's just lies,
Yeah.
It kind of ticks me off, really.
Yeah.
Really.
Well, this is the thing. They can't tell you what to think, but news media can tell you what to think about. They don't want you thinking about him. They want you thinking about mama.
Right. That's true.
Mama and the little kids.
But I'm glad that you got people like Fox and Bill Melugin out there trying to straighten it out to tell the real truth, because these people just sit there and watch MSNBC or PBS all day. And it's just lies. I mean, they're just, or The View, you get to watching the wags on The View, and it just makes me sick. It makes me sick.
I got a little bit of a rant. This is another topic that we already covered. Greta Van Susteren blew it yesterday.
Oh, really?
So she's interviewing, got two things going at once. They've got a great crack journalist, young man in Tel Aviv.
From Newsmax does.
Yeah, Newsmax.
Right, okay.
Doing this live. And then she starts talking to some other guy, talking about whether or not the Iranians morally should have a nuclear missile program, weapons. While this is going on, then this crack young reporter from the 6th floor balcony says, we've got incoming right now. And he's kind of taking cover, but he keeps the camera going. And we have probably some of the best visuals of Iron Dome at work. Greta's talking to this guy about the moral arguments for Iran being able to have nuclear program. I'm like, Greta, you've got Peabody Award stuff here. You've got Pulitzer stuff here. Let's talk about what we're seeing here. Instead, she just missed it. And I'm like, shut up, woman. I'm watching something I've never seen before. Because remember, Trump is trying to sell to us a Golden Dome, which is a continental version of the Iron Dome. And I want to see how it works.
Yeah.
Because this is a huge step up from what was originally the Patriot missile system, which we were given a bunch of lies about that in the first Gulf War. It wasn't nearly as effective as they claimed it was. We were lied to. But by God, they're doing pretty good. But even then, I watched 20 missiles come in that short period of time, and one of them hit right downtown Tel Aviv. You saw the big explosion, and Greta's ignoring it. I'm like, my God, you just saw the biggest casualty, and you're ignoring it. They're just sometimes, these people have so much show prep, they got so much on their mind they got to get through that they miss the big story. So there. I ragged on you, Greta, and I'm not sorry. Okay.
George Washington University law professor Jonathan Turley said Thursday that Fulton County Superior Judge Robert McBurney recently did damage to Fannie Willis in her 2020 election interference case against Donald Trump. And so what happened, McBurney on Monday mandated that she has to hand over all communication with the White House and all the records she has in her communication with Jack Smith, who is prosecuting the case in D.C. and in Florida. And the communication with the January 6th Select Committee, and she had 5 days to do it. And so anyway, he says this is a fairly large blow to Fani Willis to have to reveal these documents and all. And he says the entire case is leaking like a sieve. It's always been because it was based on in my view, a ridiculous RICO racketeering influence and corrupt organizational theory to get the president. That's what Turley thinks.
Help me out here. Which judge, which court is this?
Let me see. Fulton County District. No, I'm sorry. Judge Robert McBurney, the Fulton County Superior Court.
That would be state court, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because he could then hold her in contempt of court if she fails. Let's see. What did Bannon and Navarro got? 4 months in prison? I think that sounds good.
Yeah, I think the least they're hoping for, and that Turley expects, is that she will finally be removed from the case.
Right. But I just think on the contempt of court charge right there.
Yeah.
If she's not giving that up, that's part of discovery. In Oklahoma, I know by law, you're required to give it to defense.
Oh, yeah.
All of that.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And just based on that, she would be thrown off of it and held in contempt.
Right.
And this would be a criminal contempt. So I think, yeah. Now, here's the other thing. There's all kinds of people that the Republicans have subpoenaed involved with the Biden administration. And if they don't testify, then again, you got the precedent of the Bannon Navarro 4 months.
Yeah, let me ask you this. That brings something up. Okay, so you got contempt of court.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of penalties are associated with contempt of Congress?
Well,
because we hear that a lot, where somebody doesn't want to show up, they won't show up to Congress, right, to testify.
Yeah. Now, by the way, my understanding of contempt, because a judge can just order it and declare you contempt based on the crime took place under the witness of the judge.
Right. But who do you know of? And maybe I just missed it, but who do you know of that's actually been locked up for being in contempt of Congress? Isn't that just something?
Well, yeah, that was Navarro and Bannon.
That was for Congress.
That was contempt of Congress.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and because it was the January 6th committee, that kangaroo court.
Right.
And so they made a referral to the Justice Department. The Justice Department then, actually, I think they did have a trial.
Because what I was going to say, the January 6th committee should not have had authority to be able to lock anybody.
Right. They violated the rules of Congress by which committees are established. And therefore, it just kind of became an ad hoc group of
a true kangaroo court.
Yeah.
Basically.
Right. And so, yeah, it is a messed up deal. And then they have destroyed all the records.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, I see. Liz should be in jail. Cheney should be in jail.
I mean,
for that. That's something you should be in jail for destruction of records.
I mean, to me, what did they come after Trump for? And they raided his Mar-a-Lago home for archives? If these aren't archives.
Yeah.
I mean, the Library of Congress should have all of this stuff. And
they not only moved it and kept it locked up or secure, at least, they destroyed it. They destroyed the records.
We just don't know who did.
Yeah.
And so we don't even have proof that it's destroyed, technically. It's just been kidnapped. We don't know where it is. Yeah. And This is the corruption. Yeah. And really, as far as I'm concerned, Nancy Pelosi needs to be held responsible. It was her Congress. Yeah. It's funny, but the Democrats are grousing about,
Trump this, Trump that, Trump. But really, it's them right now. It's a full press now, all hands on deck to try to bring down the Trump administration. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like they're flailing, Mm-hmm. And if all of the called up military that are in Los Angeles now, if they can start, and if police everywhere start taking the position that you're violating state, mm-hmm. local, and federal law, and we're going to lock you up. Here's what I keep thinking, that we should be able to bankrupt these liberals that keep putting up their bail money. Mm-hmm. And as soon as the bail money runs out, these people start actually getting convicted and going to jail, it's going to stop. Yeah. That's when it's going to stop. But until that happens, until we get serious, and I believe the good news is Kristi Noem and what's the Attorney General, Pam Bondi. As soon as these guys get serious, and I think they are, and start actually prosecuting these people and having them locked up, it's going to be something. Hey, let me ask you a question. I don't have it's over here. What is the latest on Enrique Tarrio? Because, he was rearrested
That's a good question.
For something. I can't remember. They want this guy because you can't have a black conservative out there running loose, creating havoc. Let me see, Enrique. Are you looking it up? Oh, yeah, here we go, Tarrio. So,
I know he got arrested in front of the Capitol because a protester was putting a phone in front of his face. He took the phone and
That's what it is. He broke the phone. See, the things they arrest this, they're trying to get him then on that because he had a prior arrest. But if he was pardoned, they can't hold the prior to it. But here, listen to this. Proud Boys' lawsuit against the DOJ is legally unsound, is what MSNBC says, okay?
Yeah.
But they do say this, but it's likely to win. So the Proud Boys are suing the DOJ for false imprisonment, basically, and false, and they're, here's something else. In the Wall Street Journal, Proud Boys and other far-right groups on how to respond to the No Kings protests.
Okay.
And basically what they're saying is that they should fight violence with violence. That's the difference in them and the government. So here you go. This is good. You'll like this. I'm sorry. You guys are discovering all this new news that here's what Enrique Tarrio's latest thing is, right? Mm-hmm. He is wanting to get help capture illegal aliens, but he wants to get paid for it. He's created an app. That will help catch the illegal aliens and bring them out and then get them arrested, but he wants to be paid for it.
Who is that?
Enrique Tarrio.
Oh, okay.
Proud Boys, Enrique Tarrio wants to report undocumented people and get paid for it, is basically what it's saying. Yeah. And he's got an app that will do that. Mm-hmm. It's going to expose where they all are and help ICE collect them, but he wants to get paid for it. Well, why not? Everybody else is getting paid. That's what's so funny. It's kind of a silly argument that, he wants to get paid for it, catching illegals. Well, bounty hunters have been around for how many years?
John Eccles, who's running for Attorney General, has an organization, a bunch of medical doctors and medical service, and they take care of people at the jails, but they want to get paid for it.
Right.
You're doing something that they would otherwise have to pay somebody else, employees to do.
Right.
In all the trappings that come with that, if you can, contract it out on bid, a competitive bid, why not?
Yep, that's exactly right.
Yeah. By the way, so Enrique Tarrio, he's a lot it's very similar to what happened here with Owen Schroyer of InfoWars.
Right.
Owen had previously demonstrated at a sham hearing. I think it might have been a January 6th hearing, if I remember right. But sure enough, he got arrested, spent a night in jail, got probation. On January 6th, coming up following that, he's there with Alex at the big rally that Trump has down at the Ellipse. Not Ellipse, but by the Washington Monument. And then they find out en route to the Capitol that, hey, people are busting in.
Right.
And Alex and Owen aren't even there yet, but they're communicating with leadership of this. This is, we've got to divert the people over to a rally on the east side over by the Supreme Court. So they tried doing that. And Owen did not go in the Capitol.
Right.
But he went on the steps on the east side, which were not barricaded off. And because of that, they brought charges, and he ended up spending over a month in jail based on that probation term said you cannot go back in the Capitol while you're on probation. Him being out there on the outside steps, they decided close enough. So this is the cops at the Capitol, the same mentality they had with Enrique Tarrio.
Right. He wasn't even there that
Right.
day. He was out of state, and they still arrested him for January 6th.
But the terms of the sentence is you can't go back there. And then they see him back there, so they arrest him.
Who are you talking about?
Enrique.
He wasn't there.
Now listen to me.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Just this year, he got arrested outside the Capitol. It was when somebody was in his face and he
right. I remember that. Right.
But again, they're going after him. They didn't realize, the cops, he got pardoned.
Right.
The January 6th conviction
Never happened.
doesn't exist.
Right.
It's pardoned.
Right.
Right. But they're acting like, no, we can still use it against him.
Right.
See, so and this happens a lot with cops. The guys on the beat aren't always fully informed.
Right.
And you have to feel sorry for those guys. But yet, you know what? You wear the badge. You take responsibility for the badge.
Right.
And ignorance of the law is not an excuse.
Not an excuse. Neither are these people. They're a sorry excuse. Some of these people for their, it just, it's infuriating, the people we have.
Yeah.
Take Fannie Willis or take, what's the lady up in New York, the district attorney of New York.
Oh,
yeah. These people have no idea about what the law is. They've been running a game, as we call it, on the system, and getting paid for it and using it to their own betterment, and people just seem to turn a blind eye to this stuff. Now, they need to be the ones that are in jail.
And that woman in New York, the Attorney General, is
Tish James.
Yes. She's actually just was found out guilty of the very thing she had Trump convicted of, lying on a mortgage application.
Right.
She claimed that her dad is actually her husband. And she claims to be actually living in, Norfolk, Virginia?
Yeah, Norfolk.
Yeah. And okay, you get the Trump treatment.
Right.
And you set the precedent, lady.
Right. You live by the rule.
You argued for the precedent. Fine, we're going to apply it to you. And let me quote you, no one is above the law.
No one is above the law. That's good. Hey, I'm going to switch to sports.
Okay. I've
Oklahoma
got sports,
Thunder.
Just so we know, keep track of things. We're also going to get to some city government stuff, reparations, and then a GOP meeting.
Well, let's do that first. Then let's do the reparations talk, because that may be longer than this.
Yeah,
and then we can wrap it up.
There is some misinformation about this, or maybe
you're talking about what the mayor is proposing.
The mayor,
the misinformation.
Yeah, we're talking $105 million, but the mayor says that's not taxpayer dollars.
Yeah.
he wants to set up a special church where you can donate to.
Right.
Foundation.
Foundation, right.
Yes. And that's just for his folk. It's to elevate particularly special funding, special projects that are the focus of a certain ethnicity.
Yeah, okay, all right. But we've been there, done that. The State House did this in the 90s, if you remember. I don't know if you remember, but they created a permanent scholarship, right? They built that John Hope Franklin dog park down there. That's what I call it. It's not a dog
Pocket park.
Well, yeah. But
LaFortune called them pocket parks. We're going to have a whole bunch of little parks.
Yeah, well, that's
street corners.
And I guarantee you, you do not have residents of North Tulsa going there and contemplating and meditating, to relive the horrors of 1921. It just didn't happen, and it's not happening. And but anyway, that was the whole purpose of John Hope Franklin Park. They created a scholarship to address this and give North Tulsa specifically. No. These are, I don't know, it's some special scholarship. And John Sullivan got Congress to dedicate $1 million for the park, and then somebody else and all these private entities were all supporting this whole John Hope Franklin Park. But then the state legislature, like I said, created a permanent scholarship for students from North Tulsa to address these things. And they made an apology. I mean, they did all of these things. They bent all the way between their legs and kissed their own butts. And
visualize that, folks.
they did all of this. And now we're doing it again. We're going back over it again. And I know.
Hey, white guilt works.
I know the mayor. Here's the deal. You've got these people that won't leave him alone, and he's got to live in that community with that, even though his kids go to a private school. But he's got to play the game.
Eddie, would it have an effect on you?
What?
This kind of pressures that he's under? How would those pressures affect you, Eddie?
They wouldn't.
Exactly. So don't give him a pass.
Okay. Sorry. You dirty rat. No, I'm kidding.
No, if you got a backbone, don't complain that he doesn't.
No, I understand what you're saying. And here's the saddest thing. I think he truly is a nice guy. You met him.
Oh, yeah. You and I both think
charming. Everybody loves it. Everybody loves the guy.
Personally, yes.
Right. But here's the deal. He hooked his wagon to the wrong horse.
Exactly.
Kathy Taylor is the puppet master basically for him, and the money behind Kathy Taylor. And I guess he's got to follow that money trail or be led by it. And it's too bad because he's a really sharp, good guy, but he's doing the wrong things. So
he's got a bracelet that says WWKD. What would Kathy do? It's sad in this whole thing. We got to celebrate the name of one of the most abusive slaveholders in American history, Greenwood LaFleur. And these people are just too stupid. No, they're not stupid.
They're ignorant.
They've been presented with the truth. They're lying to themselves.
I don't think they've ever been presented with the truth. I honestly don't think. I guarantee you, if we went right now and drove to North Tulsa and grabbed wherever out in some and had, how these people do on these with a mic.
Yeah.
Who is Greenwood, the Greenwood area of Tulsa named after?
Yeah, you're right.
But you
ask them, what are the things that Booker T. Washington stood for? They wouldn't know that either.
They wouldn't know that either. The way to do it, though, as far as Greenwood, would be to say, what would you say about a slaveholder that was working for the Confederacy?
Yeah, naming the city street after.
Name or a whole part of town after him.
Because remember, we had to get rid of Brady Street because somebody thinks he was a Klan member.
Right, yeah. But we know Greenwood LaFleur was a member of the Confederacy.
Oh, he was best friends with Jefferson Davis, the president.
And owned slaves. That's right.
He literally would not move to Oklahoma himself because he had too much wealth in LaFleur County, Mississippi.
Right.
His plantation.
Right.
Over 100 black slaves.
Right. So,
yeah.
Take that. But anyway, as far as the reparations, the good news is the GOP is formulating a committee to fight against it.
You know what I would admire?
What would you admire?
Monroe Nichols doing if he did this? If he issued an apology on behalf of the city of Tulsa for naming Greenwood a street after a slave owner.
That would be.
And calling for the abolishment of that name from a city street. God, would that take balls? Oh, man. But you know what? You can't argue with them logically.
No, that's the thing. They don't want logic. They just want to go their way. And the guy who wrote this, I can't remember the periodical that he wrote this in about Brady and what the original Brady was supposed to have been, and then why you got to get rid. Nothing infuriates me or makes me more upset is than some white liberal person trying to say he's my friend.
Yeah.
I want to evoke Malcolm X.
Yeah, what did Malcolm say?
Stay away from them.
They're your worst enemy.
The worst
They are
enemy.
the black man's worst enemy.
Exactly, worst enemy. So, it makes me think of a Willie Mays commercial for blasting caps. Do you remember? Were you old enough to see that? Back in the 60s, Willie Mays did these PSAs on TV for blasting caps. And he says, kids, these are blasting caps. Don't touch them. Don't touch them. You see one? Don't touch them. And my friends in Philadelphia, this is in Philadelphia, my black friends, they used to just rip him for his butchering the English language because he had a speech impediment, basically.
Of course.
But he's still my hero. Willie Mays, one of the greatest athletes ever. But anyway, but I always think of that. So if you see these people talking about reparations, don't touch them. Don't touch that issue. Just
what's a blasting cap?
You know what a blasting cap is? Okay, the thing you stick in dynamite that explodes and causes the dynamite. The blasting caps are these little mini explosive devices with a fuse. The fuse is hooked to a blasting cap, and they stick it into the C4, into the dynamite, and then you light it, and that small explosion creates the bigger explosion.
Oh, gotcha. So you still have a fuse, right?
Yeah, the fuse is attached to the blasting cap. Okay. The blasting cap is attached to the fuse. And then it's made out of metal, copper or something. Okay. And then you stick that into the dynamite.
So that starts the chain reaction.
Or the C4, right. Yeah. And it explodes and then causes
So it's the mini explosion.
Right.
That's usually...
just like a nuclear... Yeah. In a nuclear bomb, you have the mini... causing
that starts a chain reaction. Okay. Okay.
I'm sorry. I didn't realize you didn't know what a blasting cap
I'm a mere boy. I'm compared to you.
But if you ever come across one, don't touch it.
Yeah. See, I did come across, as a kid, I'm at my dad's family home. He was literally born in the kitchen table at home. And then they built a bigger house and they just kind of left this old little shack as storage. Up in the rafters, they still had a case of dynamite. And I'm like, how'd you get dynamite? I says, we ordered Sears Roebuck.
We ordered this Sears Roebuck.
Yes. Back in pioneer days, you could just order it.
That's true.
And because they had a beaver dam on this property that they had bought in the middle of the winter, didn't realize. They bought swampland.
Isn't it funny? We didn't have laws against that stuff, and yet people weren't killing themselves or each other with this stuff,
But the problem with dynamite is the older it gets, the more unstable
it
gets,
leaks.
Right?
It leaks this glycerin.
And they're saying, stay away. As a kid, I'm looking up and seeing that crate. It would just look like almost like old-fashioned beer cases.
I think heat has something to do with it, what causes it to leak and crystallize and all that stuff.
Yeah, and so... Anyway, eventually, they called the state and said, we got this dynamite here. We'd like to get rid of it. And they said, don't go near it. And the state, Minnesota, had to spend this special team down there, SWAT gear. I mean, all this, and somehow they took a robot, got that thing out, put it in, and drove off with it.
It reminds me of one of my favorite movies, the original, with Mel Gibson and Danny Glover. Was it Cops? Oh, I can't remember the movie right now. But anyway, it was a scene where they had the mob guys had put dynamite under the toilet seat. Do you remember? Danny Glover sitting on the toilet seat, and he calls Murdoch, what's his name, Mel Gibson, in. Oh. He calls him in to help him, and he's sitting on the toilet with this dynamite under him. And when you sat on the seat, that's what. It triggered it that if you get up, it goes off. Oh. And so anyway, they had to figure out how to do that.
That's called taking one up, though.
Oh yeah, man! That's what you're telling me about the dynamite.
Yeah.
Hey, that should reparations. Don't touch it. Don't touch it.
So, but at the same time, see, here's the thing: there's a lot of people concerned that somehow. Remember, let me put it this way: Frank Keating announced we're going to have special foundation, private money, going to finish the dome, the rotunda at the state capitol. Right. In the end, they didn't have enough money.
So the state
taxpayers end up paying the rest.
I guarantee you, sure. That's going to happen. That's where they're headed. That this is just the beginning. I told you that it's the itch that cannot be scratched. Mm-hmm. It's.
Do you remember the narrative that other people said during the campaign you were in about Lori Decker Wright?
Our new Republican.
Yeah, she evidently the city council had given a grant to the opera, according to this narrative, of like $80,000, and shortly thereafter, Lori Decker Wright got hired to be the director of the opera, getting paid something like $80,000.
No, $240,000. $240,000 is what she was getting paid.
She's getting $250,000?
Almost $250,000, yeah.
To organize a choir? Sorry.
Yeah.
It just
that was the issue, yeah.
But when you're, legislating money that ends up becoming goes in your pocket, and I remember talking to somebody who's, I guess, somewhat involved with a PAC. He says, yeah, we got all kinds of cease and desist, so we couldn't put that out, or we were afraid to put it out. Mm-hmm. But that's part of the narrative of the campaign that the voters never really got to hear.
No.
Because I know you and I did not.
We tried to.
You and I didn't in the campaign address that issue, but it was a PAC that was concerned about this and had done the research.
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah, so that's reparations. We're done.
Because right now
it's not. I'm trying to end it.
I am.
Every time I try to end it,
I am. The park department is crying like we're not going to have Freedom Fest anymore. Monroe is gutting the park budget.
Right.
And nobody knows if that's involved with wanting to divert money elsewhere. So those are things that are very real.
Right. Sure.
So that's it on city. And that was pretty much it other than the GOP thing and then sports. So you and I went to a meeting. What'd you think of the county committee meeting?
Oh, I thought it was great. 176 people showed up for the Tulsa County Republican Party. It was precinct leaders and assistant precinct leaders meeting together and taking care of some business and planning for the future. So I thought I'd never seen a meeting that big.
I wanted to come sit by your table, but all the other seats were taken by all these women. There's Eddie and like 8 women at this table. I mean,
had I known when I sat down there was nobody there when I sat. It was just me.
Oh, Eddie!
It was just me, So
see, you are legendary more than you realize. I finally go sat down on the other side. I'm talking to people and stuff, and your name comes up. And these people really didn't know you. And I said, one of the things I've learned, I said, I had to read Booker T. Washington's biography.
From slavery.
Yeah. And I said, they don't dare teach that stuff up at Booker T. Washington High School.
No.
And I said, and then I said, another guy Eddie quotes a lot is Malcolm X. Well, they just thought, what is that man doing in the Republican Party? I said, you know what? One of my favorite quotes of Malcolm X, because after hanging with Eddie, I've started reading. Malcolm X actually said the biggest enemy of the black man is the white liberal. Boy, did that get their attention. Now all of a sudden they want to go study Malcolm X.
Yeah, well, they need to. Yeah.
There you go.
Speaking at Booker T. Washington High School,
mm-hmm.
I've often said if he were alive, he would burn it down.
Yeah.
But I went there one day when my son was at the Coast Guard Academy, for several years after, I was doing recruiting on behalf of them. So I went to Booker BTW and spoke to them about, having a rep come in or me come in and look at getting some appointments to go to the Coast Guard Academy. Well, it was like, oh no, we can't have that. We're not going to support anything with the military. They were so against any armed forces, anything, and they're so stupid they don't even realize that the Coast Guard Academy basically does life-saving, on the sea and air,
Drug interdiction.
Right. But the primary thing is still patrolling the coast.
Sure.
And saving people in dire straits out in the ocean.
Yeah.
Or in mountains. In Alaska, they do a lot of rescue.
Yeah. Carnival cruise ships that are broken down, all of them.
Right. So, but these people just don't. They're so, and that's why I said, I wanted to go up there with a camera and a mic and start interviewing students and ask them about the different things about Booker T. Washington and what he stood for and things like that. Just ask them quick. I had a whole 200 questions to ask, and I guarantee you they couldn't answer one of them. And none of their staff or administration could answer them either.
Yeah.
Because I've often said they should rename it to the W.E.B. Du Bois High School.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, sports.
Yeah, but by the way, I just want to say about that county committee meeting.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Best ever.
Yeah.
Number one.
It was.
We passed a resolution calling for a return to partisan elections, right. City of Tulsa.
That's very important. This is very important.
I thought it was a little bit ambiguous. So I go to the microphone and I say, some of you might know better than me, but didn't it take a city charter change, vote of the people, to get rid of partisan elections? Don't we need to specify a charter change back to? And Brent Van Norman says, no, we got it covered, And Jamie Fowler, former city council member, he says, no, you got to specify, because you got to hold him to the fire. Anything less is just,
right.
Giving lip service. Right. And as soon as Jamie says it, everybody votes unanimously for it. So I go to Jamie. I said, well, now we know who has cred in this room, because I can't even convince one person. And Jamie says, hey, if you hadn't said it, I wouldn't have thought of it. So that was good.
So can we go to sports now?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
All right.
The Oklahoma Thunder pulled a victory from the jaws of defeat last night.
Yeah.
They were down by 9 points with 3 minutes to go, and they were able to bring it back. And my wife and I watched, and it was pretty exciting.
So it's game one in reverse.
Yeah, you're right. It was.
Because game one, they were up the whole game and up by 9 points in the last 3 minutes, and somehow found a way to throw the game and lose it.
Yeah, so now
2-2.
2-2. We've tied it back up, and we come back home now.
For the next, is it 2 games?
No, now it's 1-1 and 1.
Yeah, okay.
So that's what it'll be. So we play home, play there, and then come back for the final game if necessary.
Yeah.
If we can't beat them in 2 games, but this next game is very important.
I think the odds makers are still saying that Thunder is the favorite.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think they are.
I had no idea.
Indiana is kind of a Cinderella team. A lot of people are rooting for Indiana as a Cinderella. Yeah.
ESPN is doing all these fluff pieces that I guess now all of a sudden Halliburton is sweethearts with Caitlin Clark, and they want you to follow. This is the Kelsey and Taylor all over again.
No, she has a boyfriend.
Well, they're pitching this. I'm telling you, go to ESPN.
Oh.
It was a big write-up last night.
Oh, that they're good friends. Or
About their
close.
friendship.
Oh, their
They're
friendship,
calling
right.
it that.
Yeah.
But, yeah, they want you to fall in love with them. The other thing I'm finding out ESPN is I didn't realize the reason for sports is so you can gamble. Because right there when you see the schedule, they tell you what the over and under, who's favored by how many points and all that. Gambling is taking over sports.
Oh, yeah, it's ridiculous. I hate it.
And
I don't gamble.
ESPN is taking the money. You know,
Oh, yeah, sure. And we've legalized it, which reminds me, if you look at NIL, it's money. Name, image, and likeness of these college athletes. And they're wanting to now they're trying to organize the NIL money situation. But once you open that door, you might as well forget it. It's going to be the highest bidder, and I don't know if they'll ever be able to get it back. You might as well just call it professional sports. It's the new professional sports, and probably get down to high school because the good basketball players don't play for their schools anymore. They do. It's AAU basketball, so. Sports is a whole different animal from what it used to be.
Yeah. But, AAU's been around for decades.
Oh, yeah. But it wasn't like it is now to where the kid, because they have different rules in AAU basketball rather than high school collegiate sports or the OSSA here in Oklahoma. Yeah. So if a kid plays AAU ball, they're not under the same, like they get to give them shoes, they give them uniforms, they give them, they get to travel and expenses.
Yeah, I think what they refer to as club leagues and stuff like that. It falls under those.
It's kind of like soccer around the world, where it's professional from the time, you're 12 years old, really. So,
yeah.
The Panthers in hockey, Stanley Cup, Panthers had an opportunity to go up 3 games to 1.
I know. I looked at it early because the bombing was going on, right? So I just checked on it. I said, wow, first period, they're up 3-0.
Right.
I thought, it's done.
And they actually ended up
losing that game.
Well, it ended up
overtime
4-3.
Yeah.
For the other team.
Yeah.
For Edmonton.
So it's saying
they gave up 3 straight goals again to let Edmonton take the lead, and then in overtime Edmonton got them. But so we're hoping they can pull up. They're in Edmonton again now tonight. Actually, they'll be playing, and so we'll see what that.
So here we are with 2 sports: basketball and hockey, traditional winter sports.
Yeah.
That are the 2
in June.
2 things yet to be decided.
That's it. I didn't even think of that. Yeah, that's true.
I know. I have a hard time thinking hockey because, again, where I'm from, hockey's played outdoors.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. You can play it outdoors there in December and January. So Anyway, Dave, I think that's it. I think we've covered the bases, and we're thankful for you joining us, and hope you enjoy it. So
next week we have Justin Hornbeck in. He is a candidate for a corporation commission.
Something that a lot of people don't know about the Corporation Commission and what they do. So this will be informative for everybody.
Well, if you're complaining about your utility bills,
right.
this is the guy that sets your utility bills.
Right. Hopefully.
Yeah.
He's the guy.
Yeah. But this is the kind
Well,
of
we'll find out next week if he's a good guy or bad guy. So
yeah. And let's see. There's a few scandals going on. Mental health, they had to find a new director because the old one was claiming to be licensed when she let it expire. And she should actually be facing criminal charges. But a friend of mine called and said, no, she didn't actually pitch herself to a consumer as such. She just put it all over letterhead, you know.
Oh, yeah. She just pitched herself to thousands of consumers instead of one particular consumer.
Yeah. It's stolen valor in the mental health field.
Yeah. That came up. And there's some more with some like embezzlement stuff, I think, as well. Some funny money stuff. Yeah.
We saw a narrative this week. Governor Stitt was on Newsmax. I've heard DeSantis talking about as well, about giving advice to motorists who are being accosted by a mob out on the highway.
Oh, yeah. He said, run them over. Basically. Oh, and then the sheriff, if one of the counties in Florida basically said, if you attack or do anything to harm one of our police officers, they have a shoot to kill order.
Yeah. They mentioned you throw a brick at us.
Right.
You know, so basically I listened to that list, and those are all things that would constitute attempted or assault with a deadly weapon.
Right.
Because everything he mentioned was a deadly weapon.
Right.
And yeah, they're all freaking out over it. And he's exactly right.
Yep.
And it just depends.
Until you treat it like that, it won't stop.
Yeah. And
if you're going to arrest Enrique Ontario and for, you know, and arrest him for 20 years for burning an American flag. It wasn't the American flag. It was the anarchist flag, I think it was. I know it wasn't an American flag. It was one of the protesters' flags.
Well, that wasn't 20 years. That was his first conviction. And it wasn't his property that he damaged.
Right.
But it's a misdemeanor thing.
Exactly. And so then, yeah, but they use that as
first strike, and it's
exactly for giving him the 20 years.
Yeah,
I mean it's insane, and yet they want to whine because now we want to get people who are actually threatening physical harm to law enforcement.
Yeah,
and you can't kill them, you can't do that, you can't brutalize them, you can't, you know.
Yeah, what we've seen in LA is they would show up with hammers and start busting up the curbs and that and
chunks of concrete,
which are a deadly weapon.
Right.
And so, I mean, ask George Zimmerman. That's why he was justified in shooting, because they were taking his head and going into a sidewalk with his head, banging it in. Still, whether you're banging the concrete into him or him in the concrete, it's still assault with a deadly weapon.
Allegedly.
Well, okay. Yeah. That was the testimony that was presented on the stand.
Yeah. No, I agree. I did that kind of as a joke because Pat and I argued about the Zimmerman. I thought Zimmerman should have gone to jail. Not for what he did necessarily, but he was told by the 911 operator, stay in your car.
Doesn't mean anything. That's advice. That is advice. That is not a badged officer, and they're merely giving advice.
Right.
It's not a court order, you know?
Well, yes, but at the same time, it ended up in the death of someone that was unnecessary.
Okay.
All right. So we'll leave it at that.
Yeah. So anyway, the busting up, with the hammer and things, and what they were doing back in the quote summer of love was they would show up with backpacks full of frozen water bottles.
Right.
Okay. So by the time the evidence is presented in court, it's just a water bottle.
Yeah. Right.
Soft and cushy, right? But it was a rock.
Right. Right.
at the time of the,
Yeah. They would
assault.
need to film that, in its frozen state. The other thing that is really disgusting, they're taking bottles of urine and throwing bottles of urine at them and stuff like that. It's just childish, crazy stuff that they keep pushing. And now, oh, by the way, George Soros has actually been summoned to Congress to answer for one of his organizations funding these riots. So
that's going to be delicious.
That's going to be
the other thing that was said by law enforcement is you spit on an officer, that's assault, felony assault.
Yeah, it should be.
So, yeah.
Get your nasty germs on us. Okay.
Busy week. Looking forward to next.
All right, everybody. Have a great week, and we will hopefully talk to you again next week. Them